Chers tailles et chers frères et sœurs, j'ai une question au sujet des relations amoureuses ou sexuelles en dehors d'un couple existant.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, I have a question about intimate relations or sexual relations outside of an already existing couple.
D'un côté, quand je me connecte avec l'amour que je ressens pour mon partenaire, j'ai envie de me réjouir de chaque moment heureux qu'il se fait vivre.
On one hand, when I connect myself with my love for my partner, I want to enjoy and savor every moment that we have to live.
Et de le laisser libre de choisir ce qui est juste et nourrissant pour lui.
And to allow him to choose freely what is nourishing for him.
J'aimerais être simplement heureuse pour lui si c'est dans des relations intimes avec d'autres femmes qu'il nourrit ses besoins de joie et d'épanouissement.
I would like to be happy for him if it's really the case that it's by having intimate relations with other women that he can nourish his joy and flourish.
Et j'ai l'impression que c'est dans cette direction que m'amène le non-attachement.
And I have the impression that non-attachment takes me in that direction.
D'un autre côté, la très grande attirance physique et la forte connexion que l'on peut ressentir avec un nouveau partenaire me semble être un très grand risque pour une relation déjà existante.
On the other hand, I feel like the strong physical attraction that we can feel for a new partner is a risk for an already existing relationship.
Et plus je me connecte avec l'amour que je ressens pour mon partenaire, plus je réalise la souffrance que je ressentirais si une de ces relations extra-conjugales a mené à une rupture brutale de notre couple.
And the more I connect myself with my love for my partner, the more I realize how much pain it would cause me if one of his extramarital relationships led to a rupture of for our relationship to break.
Et j'ai besoin de confiance et de stabilité dans notre relation pour m'investir complètement et profondément. Et je réalise que cette peur m'en empêche.
And I need confidence and trust in our relationship in order to live it fully, and I realize that this fear prevents me from feeling that.
Et en conclusion, je n'arrive pas à me satisfaire à l'idée d'une relation dans laquelle je souhaiterais contrôler les besoins de mon partenaire et en entravant sa liberté.
At the same time, I am not able to reconcile myself with the idea of a relationship in which I would limit my partner's freedom.
Et je n'arrive pas non plus à m'investir complètement dans une relation que je sens risquer de s'arrêter du jour au lendemain pour une cause extérieure à notre couple.
But at the same time, I can't invest myself fully in a relationship which I feel might end from one day to the next because of something happening outside of our couple.
Et donc je me demande quelle voie je pourrais trouver pour me sentir sereine tout en acceptant complètement mon partenaire et les besoins qui pourraient naître en lui.
So I want to know what kind of path I could follow to feel at peace in completely accepting my partner and also accepting whatever needs he may have.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, thank you for the question. I think it's thank you for putting yourself and making yourself also vulnerable. I don't think it's necessarily a very easy question to ask. The first thing that came up to my mind when you were sharing is... Ça va si je parle en anglais? Okay. The first thing that came up to my mind was when you were sharing is the 4 elements of true love that Brother Phap shared about yesterday or the day before. And the capacity to bring happiness to someone, the capacity to relieve the suffering in someone, the capacity to bring joy and to nourish joy and to feel the joy of the other person as our own joy, and the capacity to see the suffering of the other person as our own suffering also, the equanimity, right? And apart from the 4 elements, our teacher also added 2 a little later. Thai is really good at that, at just like taking the teaching and then just doing other things with it, adding things up, which are also very important for me. And those are the 2 that came out when you were talking, is trust and respect as also being elements of true love. And it's a little bit funny to be in a line, actually. Yeah, to have trust and respect in a relationship, both the trust towards oneself, like self-trust, and also self-respect. And also to have trust and respect towards the other person. And of course that is going both ways, right? It's not only one way. If we really want to nourish and to develop something that is long-lasting, and that if we want to go on that path of true love, this is also up to us. What kind of love we find and what kind of love, what kind of path we want to nourish in ourselves, and what kind of love we want to develop. But for me personally, I really see relationship as being a path. That maybe as a monastic, we don't really have a partner. We have a lot of brothers and sisters that are also becoming our path, a part of our path. But in an intimate relationship, the other person is becoming my path. No? Full part of my path. And also, and the relationship itself is a path. And for me, it's a path of transformation and of healing, and of really learning how to truly love myself, how to truly understand myself, and how to truly understand and love somebody else. Having said that, I feel that if this 6th element of true love is not present in a relationship, it's just to wonder why, and to see, is it something that I would like to implement in this relationship? Because for me, if true love is bringing happiness, no? And I feel that as a person, I want happiness. And I want to be able to flourish and to bloom as a human being. And that my love should help me to do that with these 6 elements. So whatever is happening in the relationship, is it helping to develop these 6 elements or not? And to look and maybe to talk with the person if it's not. You know, and to see that maybe it's not the kind of relationship I wish for myself. And to be able, for me, the respect is a really important one, in the sense that love is not always trying to make the other person happy, because that's not going to last very long if it's only about trying to make the other person happy. And for me, I would not trust someone that only wants to make me happy. You know? I don't feel this is where I can put my full trust, because I need the person to be solid. I need that person to know what is good for him or for her, or not. I need that person to be peaceful and clear. And if that person doesn't have these elements, it's very difficult for me to have trust. Yeah. Thank you.
So good morning, dear Tai and dear Sangha. I have a question which is a bit philosophical, but I checked very well whether it resonates with my heart. And I think in this case, my mind and my heart are one. So my question relates to how freely and independently this Buddhist tradition sees human beings as being able to act. Or to put differently, how much free will does this Buddhist tradition attribute to human beings? And this question is important to me because I hear two different elements of the practice, of the teachings, which I have difficulties to bring together. The first one is understanding the causes and conditions, a practice we did yesterday with a sister in the beginning a new exercise, like trying to understand if we have a conflict, the causes and conditions which bring that person to act in a certain way. And then the second exercise would be like watering the right seeds, where I see a lot of opportunity of actually free will, because I decide to water a seed. And I have difficulties to bring these two really together and to know how you relate them in your practice. The free decision of like watering certain seeds, and then also looking at the causes and conditions where I don't see the free will involved. And this question touches me personally in the sense that I recognize in myself that I often judge myself for not taking certain decisions or acting in a certain way. So like not using my free will to actually do something better. An easy example would be like in the morning in the breakfast line, deciding, do I take the third bread? Do I take another spoon of marmalade? Or, you know, do I do it or don't I do it? And I have this inner space of like doing it or not doing it. And I know I don't need it, but I feel there's this, oh yeah, you know. Yeah, this is a funny example, but they can go like into like more serious areas. Like with my girlfriend, for example, when I feel hurt, do I like go and blame, or do I like say, oh, girl, I feel hurt. Something was touched in my side, inside me. Can you help me? And I feel that I have that space, but that it takes effort to go to the space which is, which is more wholesome. So, and I really want to know how do you see free will in this tradition? How does free will fit into the concept of causes and conditions? Where do we have free will? Thank you.
Dear Tai, dear Sangha, thank you for the question. I think there's a paradox, and we're not going to resolve it right now. So we have to be kind of at ease with that we're not necessarily going to resolve it. Having said that, I think the seeds of the answer are already in your question, in that we can say that just by observing our own life, if we look carefully, I think we can see that most of the time, not much free will, if we're honest. Most of the time, our actions are very much conditioned. So it doesn't mean no free will, it means not much free will. Right? So if you go into Starbucks and you want to choose which kind of coffee you're going to order, there's all these choices. Wow, I could choose anything. I'm free. And yet somehow you always end up choosing the same thing. More or less. And even if you don't choose the same thing, you know, maybe it's because you were conditioned by somebody who, you know, somebody right before told you, you should be free. You should choose something different today. So are you really free? I don't know. But we can also say that mindfulness is free will. So according to the degree of mindfulness that we have in any moment, we have more or less freedom, more or less sovereignty. I think we all know the feeling of being pushed by our habit energies, pushed by our suffering. And sometimes we don't know what it is that makes us say, you know, watch another episode on Netflix when we really need to sleep, you know? Why do we do that? Why do we have to check email 438 times a day? You know? Is it really necessary? Are we freely doing that, or are we being pushed by something? So I think what's powerful in this practice, in what we have received from the Buddha and from the ancestral teachers, is that we have a way of observing ourselves in the present moment and recognizing what is going on. So we might be in a situation where we've been triggered. You know, maybe we're angry, we're reacting. And usually we'd have a tendency just to go on autopilot, to lash out, to respond in anger, to say something not very free, which maybe later we regret. But just by adding one ingredient, one kind of spice to the dish, which is mindfulness, the whole situation is different. And according to the degree of mindfulness that we have, the power of that mindfulness, the strength of it that we've cultivated in our daily practice, we have more or less capacity to embrace our habit energies and say, oh, hey, I don't need to be pushed. I can stop. And there's maybe a habit that's been transmitted from generation to generation, and maybe none of our ancestors have been able to stop yet. So it has a lot of power, it has a lot of inertia. You know, it's like trying to stop a freight train. Sometimes it's very difficult, because the habit energy is so strong. And we've watered it in our own lifetime, and it's been watered for many lifetimes before us, perhaps. So we need a kind of equal and opposite force of mindfulness to stop it. And I think we've all had the chance to experience that in our lives as practitioners, that there have been moments when we've been able to go, I don't need to react like last time. I do have more space. I can stop. I can kind of intervene in the neural pathway and choose a new neural pathway. And perhaps at first it's not very strong because the other neural pathway is very well established. But with practice, it can get stronger. And we can intervene, we can stop, and then compassion has a chance. We can choose. Say, no, what I deeply want, my deepest wish actually is to respond with love. To respond with inclusiveness. To respond with compassion. And is that really free will or not? I don't know. I think we need to continue to investigate. Thank you for your question.
Hi, dear Thai and dear Sangha. My heart is beating very fast because of the question I want to raise now. I don't know how to react with the presence of Nutella on the breakfast table this morning. I am saying that because I love eating meat. I used to love drinking Coca-Cola. And I know Nutella is delicious. But the main ingredient of Nutella is palm oil. And I wonder, with mindfulness, regarding like the sentences of the mindfulness practice about food consumption, like, I love that there's no milk, for example, on the table for breakfast. I love that there's no meat. But this morning there was Nutella, and this is a retreat called Wake Up Earth. So I would like not to really ask a question, but that we maybe look together inside of ourselves about this thing. I was reacting to it, and I'm still reacting to it. I would like to be in peace, have compassion. I know that a lot of us enjoyed eating it this morning, and if I would have taken a spoon, I would have loved it as well. But I want to connect it to the forests, to the animals, to the insects, to the pollution it has caused, to the death of many living beings it has caused.
Dear respected Thai, dear friends, for us, for myself at least, when we practice, it's actually how to practice for ourselves. Because in this world, we cannot stop everything that's happening that we see that is not wholesome. Like we cannot stop wars. We cannot stop people hating each other. There's time where I stay in the restaurant and I see people eating meat and they enjoy it very much. So how do I practice so that way I can see all these images and still be able to have peace and happiness in myself? Otherwise, I will always live my life in suffering because so many things that I see. So that part is how to judge. Do we need to judge others? So in our practice, we do our best to do what is best for ourselves, to keep our belief. So for myself, I'm a vegetarian because I do care about the animals. I have love for them. That part I can practice. I'm very happy when I'm able to eat just vegetables. And I know that my body is being nourished very well because I just need the vegetables. But am I really a vegetarian? Not quite so. If I look at it deeply, when I wash my vegetables, how many little bugs die? How many eggs that was on the vegetables that I did not see and I cook and I also eat. I did not see that. But I look deeply. I'm not fully a vegetarian. None of us are. In order to keep those crops from growing, my brothers also take the slugs away from them to keep them away from the vegetables. Well, those little guys also need food to eat, right? And now you just pick them up and put them somewhere else. You didn't kill them, but you did starve them for that one night. They did not have food to eat that one night. So being a vegetarian, am I fully holy and not harming anything else in this world? No. I still harm. So that's why I'm very grateful when I eat. I'm grateful that I have this food to eat, that the earth gave me this food. I'm also grateful from the lives that have been given up for me to nourish myself. So what do I want to do with my life when I am alive, when I nourish these in? So with that gratefulness, I learned to cultivate things that will be better for the world, things I want to do that's more wholesome, to generate more wholesome energies. So I do that, but knowing that I also need to be grateful for those that I have taken their lives from. So we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. This world is not perfect, but we can do better by ourselves and take good care of ourselves when emotions come up. So there's no need for me to judge the person next to me, whether or not that person is vegetarian, whether that person or not practicing. It does not really matter. It's how I practice. Am I happy? Am I being able to do the things that I want to do without any regrets? That if today is my last day, I will go smiling because I know everything I did today, I did it with all my heart, with love, with care, and I live it without any regrets. That's more important. So for me, that's how I practice and how I live my daily life. I hope that shed a little bit light on the subject you have raised. Of course, we still need to bring awareness of things we see, but we just bring up the awareness. It's up to other people to practice how they want to practice, how they're more comfortable in their life, as we are in our own practice, how comfortable we are in our daily practice and our life. Thank you, dear Sangha.
Dear Thầy, dear Sangha, can I just add a little bit? Thank you, Brother Khởi, for a very complete answer already. But I just wanted to probably share my experience in community living. I thought there was an element about community living and how we deal with this as a community, because when you shared about that, I also empathize with you, because I felt similar feelings living in the community when I have my own values and what I think is good and safe and protecting the environment, but I see that around me maybe others are not doing that or maybe not aware of the same thing. And the way that I practice, I try to remember that this practice, this first mindfulness training, reverence for life, is also to cultivate compassion. And compassion towards the beings, the little beings or Mother Earth, but also compassion towards others who may not be aware. And if I react with judgment, with hatred, with ill feelings towards that person, I'm not nourishing compassion in me either. I'm not nourishing kindness and understanding in me. So, of course, I recognize what is happening and I take care of my feelings about it. But at the same time, if I react with anger, then it doesn't really help the situation. It just creates more separation. And so I try to come from a calm place and try to bring more awareness. And when I'm able to bring awareness in a calm and kind and understanding way, then I think there's more chance of transformation and chance of change happening. So that's how I practice with it too, in the community, because our community is not perfect, and I understand that there are other needs that people have, and always to try to look at the good things that are happening already. We are already doing a lot, or the best that we can towards this ideal, towards this aim of really protecting Mother Earth and protecting with compassion for all beings. And I have to remember, I have to practice compassion with and harmony with the Sangha as well. So if I create a lot of anger and resentment towards the things that is happening in my community, then I'm not really cultivating compassion in myself. And it's very difficult for me because then I have a conflict. It's the community that I love, but then I have all of this anger towards the community, and it just doesn't do me any good in the end. So practicing for myself, but also practicing to be in harmony, to understand and to cultivate compassion aside from that. Thank you.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, I have a question, and I'm going to read it because I know otherwise I'm going to go off on a tangent. So the question is around transforming dogmatism and, for me, in a related matter, on right view or right perception. So often I find myself in situations with someone who has quite strong views that are quite different from mine. So say someone more traditional, with very strict ideas around gender identity or against any mixing of ethnicities, or completely against migration. And I can listen and I can understand, and I share quite some of the fears that I feel come up when we talk about these issues. And then I also often play devil's advocate to bring up different viewpoints, just to foster a diversity of views in the discussion, bring up different points. But I often wonder if that's enough, or if I should take a firm stance and say that I feel something is wrong. But then as soon as I think about that, I'm like, well, who am I to say that my perceptions are right? So that kind of is the question, whether you feel it's useful to take a strong stance, and if so, on what basis? Because while I feel my view might be based on love and compassion, I can also see the other person's view being based on love in a different way.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, thank you for your question. It's a difficult question, and one that's I feel is very much alive in these days for all of us to one degree or another. I think we live in a time when our views are easily polarized, and we easily, because of the way news is reported, we sometimes have a tendency only to sort of reinforce our views and to be in an echo chamber, whether on the left or the right or somewhere else. And there's a tendency as well to decide quickly how we feel about an issue. From my experience living in community, what I notice is that there's not much possibility of real dialogue or transformation of views or creation of more openness both in myself and maybe in other people, unless there's a real relationship. So I think that's what can really make a difference. So it might be a question more of creating contexts in which trust and mutual understanding can be fostered. And when I say understanding, I really mean understanding. I mean, you have to know somebody's history, their family, their ancestry, the history of their nation, of their people, in order to really understand. It takes effort. We have to understand ourselves as well, and we have to have the patience and the time to understand others. So I know often these days that might not be very practical, because we are in situations where maybe we're brought into contact with people with differing views, and we don't have very much time to establish that kind of understanding. But that would be my kind of recommendation based on experience, that when we really do have the time to get to know each other more deeply, then understanding can blossom, and there's enough trust and mutual respect for real listening. And then I've noticed I have a chance to question more fully my own views and find out really what they're based on, and how much is unexamined prejudice and how much is really based on insight. And the other person has a chance to do the same. And then there's a real possibility to evolve in the direction of consensus. But it can take a lot of time. We need a lot of patience for that. So I really, I think collectively as a Sangha, we need to look at this and see, if we're involved in civil society, or if we're involved in politics, if we're involved in organizing conferences or meetings, can we introduce the elements of a retreat, for example, in a conference? Can we say, before we even talk to each other, we will spend 3 days doing, walking meditation, sitting meditation. Okay, it sounds crazy, right? A little impractical, but we have to dream. And maybe if it's not 3 days, maybe it could be 1 day, or just an hour. But we have to start somewhere. But with that vision, the vision of really finding out who the other person is through deep listening, and actually through silence. I think the first thing is not to talk, to have time to be together in silence, if possible, and then to create sort of maybe other events or discussions which are more about getting to know each other, sharing the beauties of our respective cultures and backgrounds. And then once all that is in place, then we can bring up the difficult issues. So it's just a kind of something we can work towards gradually. But that's really based on our experience in living in community. I see that something very beautiful can happen, even with people whom initially I might have judged quite severely. I might have thought, I can never agree with this person about this issue. But living with them over a long period of time and getting to know them more deeply, then it's really amazing what can happen. Thank you.
I can speak in English, but I will speak in French because it's more comfortable for me. And, alors ma question est à propos de l'entraînement de l'amour véritable.
My question is about the mindfulness training on true love.
Et d'un passage en particulier.
One section in particular.
Je m'engage à ne pas avoir de relations sexuelles sans amour véritable ni engagement profond à long terme et connu par mes proches.
I am committed not to engage in sexual relations without a long-term relationship, a committed relationship made known to my family and friends, or something like that.
Dans cette phrase, personnellement, je suis totalement d'accord avec le fait de « je ne m'engage à ne pas avoir de relations sexuelles sans amour véritable ».
So in this phrase, personally, I am in accord with the part of the phrase that says not that I'm committed not to have sexual relations without true love.
Mais je ne comprends pas le ni engagement profond à long terme et connu par mes proches.
But I don't understand the part that says only within the context of a long-term commitment made known to my family and friends. Is that it? Yeah.
Et donc j'aimerais juste expliquer un petit peu une des expériences que j'ai eues. Pas dans les détails.
So I'd like to explain some experiences that I've had, not in too much detail.
Donc, j'ai des relations qui n'ont pas d'engagement et qui ne sont pas forcément connues par mes proches.
I have had sexual relationships, I assume, that are not necessarily with a commitment and that are not necessarily known by my family and friends.
Mais les moments partagés sont de véritables instants, en tout cas pour moi, d'amour véritable et de pleine conscience.
But the moments shared are, at least for me, real moments of true love and mindfulness.
Sans projection et sans attente future.
Without projection and without expectation for the future.
Et quand je dis projection, c'est-à-dire que je ne projette pas une image venant de mon passé sur la personne.
And without projection, I mean I'm not projecting an image from my past onto that person.
et que dans ces moments-là, je la vois, je la ressens telle qu'elle est.
And in those moments, I see her and feel her as she is.
Et non plus, je ne vais pas avoir des attentes sur le futur.
And I won't either have expectations about the future.
Et pour moi, c'est une pratique de l'instant présent et je ressens ça comme quelque chose de très pur.
And for me, it's a practice of being in the present, and I feel it as something very pure.
So my question is, why in the third training there is these terms of d'engagement profond in a long-term relationship known by my family or friends.
Dear Thay, dear brothers and sisters, dear friends, I will just make a start, and then all my elder brothers and sisters can add. And then we also have a workshop where you can explore these topics in depth. Don't know where to start. I believe that we can have moments of or sexual relations that can be very pleasant or very good. That and we think it's all okay, and there's no commitment involved, and both sides have verbally agreed for that to happen. And on our part, we may feel totally okay about that after the relationship moves on or something, or we move on. But I wonder whether we really know what is happening for the other person, or what has been touched off in the other person with sexual relations without a commitment and deeper kind of love. Because in the practice of the third mindfulness training is to cultivate awareness of the suffering that can be created when we have sexual relations without a foundation of love and a foundation of respect and a foundation of commitment. For us it feels okay, but I wonder whether we are aware of how it affects the other person. I have a lot of things, but my mind is a bit of a blur at the moment. And my heart is beating as well, so I'm a bit nervous. And the reason why we have that part in that we want to be in a relationship made known to our family and friends is that it's because it's for our protection and for our support. Because sometimes when we're in love, we may not be able to see other aspects of the person, or when we're in love, everything is rose-colored, and we feel as if, this person is the greatest. But when we bring them home, our families and perhaps our friends will have not rose-colored glasses, and they will see more clearly what this person is like, whether this person will be suited for us or not. Sometimes I think that's one of the reasons why we have put that part in, so that we can have the support. And when perhaps we have felt that this person is the right person for us, we bring them home. Then, and our family has accepted our commitment to this relationship, and they can support us if in the case where you have difficulties and you want to break up, but our family and friend can support us to keep our commitment. Because I find that in this day and age, I find that we very easily break a relationship when we think that it doesn't fulfill us or bring us pleasure anymore. But there is a lot that we can do to learn about ourselves and about the other person when we're able to keep a long-term commitment. And one last thing I want to add is, when we have a question, why do we want to have sexual relations with this person without a basis of long-term commitment or a deeper basis of love? Is it a need for connectedness? Is it a need for healing inside of us? Is it a need for acceptance of who we are? And can we find other ways to connect deeply or heal or accept ourselves without sexual relations? And for me, I can share that last 2 years ago, after the Women and Men's Half Day, I realized that a deeper part of me wants to connect. And the reason why I get into a relationship is because I want to connect deeply with somebody. And I didn't know how to do it without sexual relations, sexual activity. And I think people growing up these days don't know how to do that. But the conditions were right, and I felt very deeply connected to somebody without the need for sexual relations, without any need for physical contact. And that fulfilled this deep need for connectedness inside myself. And I've been working to heal myself, so I don't have to go to somebody else to fulfill that need. And I see that when I do go to somebody else, it often ends in expectation and a relationship of dependence. And that always brings difficulties and suffering. It doesn't come from a place of wholeness where you can offer the other person wholeness. So that's all I would like to say about that.
Dear family, I know that it's pretty much time for us to end, I believe, soon. And we have a lot of written questions up here. We have a book of questions, actually. Thank you for all the written questions, by the way. I just want to say a couple words about your question, and maybe in line of what Sister Nghiem shared. I guess the first thing and the most important thing I feel is to continue to have sharing about this topic as young people nowadays, and maybe with not only with young people, but maybe with people from different generations as well. But maybe and to talk about what it means for us, what true love means. That it's a word that is easy to use, but what does it really mean, and how do we practice it as a path? Again, I'm sorry, I'm coming back to that path thing. To really have deep Dharma sharing about that. And maybe that it means also, depending on our gender, what it means. Do we have the same ideas? Do we have the same experiences? and with different generations. I feel it's also very important to have different ages shining light on that. That maybe a 17 or 25 or 35 or 45 or 55 or 65-year-old would be very different what it means. And to be able to broaden our understanding of it, and also to see how it affects us as a human being and other human beings. I just want to share one thing. When my mom and dad split up, and I asked my mom whether she was going to get with somebody else. Not necessarily remarried, but just having a relationship with other men. And she told me something that really moved me, actually. She told me that for sure not. Because to be in a relationship with one person is kind of like for a whole lifetime is enough. Because it's not only about the person as an individual that you are being with, that you are loving, that you are trying to understand. It's like Brother Phap was sharing, is the family of that person, is the ancestors of that person, is all the education of that person, where the person is coming from, his or her, the history of his or her people. It's like there's a whole big thing that is there, and that if I'm making love with that person at that moment, and I'm saying it's true love, just to ask, am I sure? Am I sure? And how can we continue to have discussion about that, to broaden our understanding of what it means, in the light of many different, maybe cultures, genders, ages, all that. And maybe also sometimes with our own age group, because I think each age group also has different challenges and new ways of experiencing things. Yeah. And just one thing about make known to my parents and to my families and friends. For me, that's also a very beautiful one in terms of support. Like to see that it's not only me as an individual that is getting into a relationship, but it's, as I'm not an individual, I also have my family and friends behind me. And if I want the other person to understand me, it means understanding me, the bigger me, you know? That includes a lot of people. I feel for me this is why it's there. Again, to really come back to that true understanding and true love. And having said that, I also see that in certain situations, it's not safe. I'm thinking also, maybe not necessarily in your case, but in different cases, in a gay couple relationship, for instance, if the person is not out, that maybe this is not a safe thing to do. If the person is not out to the family. So maybe to see where the friends or family, maybe there would be a spiritual family or a closer circle of friends that can get the same support. So to understand the idea of it, and then to also do it in an intelligent way, so that it's something that we can actually do in a way that it's is safe also. Yeah, thank you.
Dear Sangha, I think we have to bring our session to a close. I just want to reflect a little bit also on what was just shared. I think it's really wonderful as a topic of further reflection and investigation, and I think it's also kind of amazing to be in this situation, that you come and ask a bunch of monks and nuns, you know, we're sitting here, let's go and ask the monks and nuns about our sex lives, you know. But there's something cool about that. And I think there's a lot that remains to be explored and shared. I think the whole polyamorous thing has happened since we ordained, so maybe we're a little bit old-fashioned as well and not totally up to date. But I also like that. I like that we don't have to be cool. You know, we can be uncool, and that's also cool. So I'd just like to suggest that perhaps we can all invite the reflection on sacredness, especially in the context of sexual relationships. Because sacredness these days seems to be very uncool. But I think we need to look carefully at what that could mean, especially in the context of a sexual relationship, and whether do we really know yet what it is to have a sexual relationship in the context of a long-term commitment, and the safety, the depth, the potential spiritual nature of that relationship. It can be to the point of communion, something very profound. And we may not have experienced that yet, but maybe that's what the third mindfulness training is, leading us towards, or inviting us to experience. So thank you for a very real question, and for all the very real questions. And I'm sure we look forward to continuing in our Dharma sharings and so on. We have many written questions, and I don't know if we can take one now or if we have to end, and then we will give all the written questions to Phap Jung, and he can answer them all in his Dharma talk tomorrow. I'm not sure.
Dear Sangha, just to relieve Phap Jung a little bit of all the questions, there's also a lot of different workshops this afternoon. So if you feel that your question relates to any of the workshop that is in the dining hall that are posted, please do go to that particular workshop, right? So that you can ask your questions there. And also, if you do feel comfortable, you can also ask during Dharma sharing tomorrow, or also just approaching any brother or sister that I'm sure would be happy to answer your questions too. Thank you.